You normally, Vinny, you're one of my smarter friends, but in this instance, you're fantastically dumb.
Well, I've never denied the fact that I'm prone to moments of pure, complete idiocy. But yeah, I don't know how dog muscles work.
You realize all mammals are largely...
Yeah, but if you look at a dog's legs, they're reverse articulated.
So there's still got to be a muscle there.
So the hamstring's in the front of the leg?
It's in the back. Still got to bend that way. A dog's leg is still going to bend like this.
Yeah, but it bends the other way, though.
Like this. That's the hamstring that pulls it that way.
Okay.
Here's a visual everybody can't see. All right, enough about Super China Buffet Day. I just got to conclude by saying a fine time was had by all. Thanks very much to everybody that showed up. The streak continues. We've still not met anybody who showed up that was an asshole. That's always nice. So, yeah, that was the story there. And let's talk a little bit about SummerSlam, and then we'll get rid of old Vince here and get a real guest on the line, that being Dave, who I believe liked the show slightly more than I did. I thought this was a really good show. I thought the last two matches were great. I don't necessarily think the last match was the best WWE match of the year. I don't even know if I would consider it the best of the Edge Undertaker matches.
I don't think it was the best match on the show, necessarily.
You thought Dave and Batista was better?
Dave and Batista was pretty damn great.
It was pretty damn great, but so was the main event. I can't fault either match.
Yeah.
I think I gave Dave and Batista 3 3/4, and I think they gave the main event 4. But it's all subjective, or as M. Rob would say, it's all objective. But let's run down the show. Let's open up with Jeff Hardy and MVP. Jeff supposedly had a broken neck. Apparently not.
He got better.
Got micro braids, though, that looked awesome. That's next for my hair, by the way, for those of you keeping track, including Doc Young, who's growing his hair exactly like mine. Apparently this is his life goal. Micro braids are next, Doc. So, anyway, they had a final match right here. MVP worked over his back and that sort of thing, and then they did a bunch of near falls at the finish. Jeff hit the Whisper in the wind and went up top for the senton, but Shelton ran out, and Jeff wiped him out with a dive and then rushed up top, did the senton, but MVP moved, and then after he crashed and burned, MVP hitting his shining Yakuza kick for the pin. And the story the announcers were trying to tell was that Jeff was reckless, and it was unfortunate, and it cost him the match. And I gave it 3 stars.
It was a very good opener. My favorite thing about it was just how simple it was. They did not do 8 million near falls. In fact, I don't think they really did any major ones. No one kicked out of any finishes or anything. They just did their stuff, and MVP got the heat, and Jeff made his comeback and hit the big dive on Shelton, missed the senton, ate the boot, and got pinned. Easy to remember. And it's 3 or 4 hours later, and I didn't have to look at my notes for any of that.
Then we had Maria doing an interview, and up walked Santino and Beth. And Santino said Maria had let herself go since they broke up, and he was currently dating a fine new woman. And Maria brought up his unibrow, and he said he grew it out because the Glamazon loved it. And then he said, but enough about my manscaping. This is the best man there's ever been.
He's awfully great.
Manscaping. How could I have never thought of that before?
Actually, I know you've heard it before because I know Craig said it once, and you laughed at
really?
Exactly the same. It's always new to you, but yes.
Wow. Now, Craig couldn't quite possibly be that witty.
I will say that Santino is funnier than Craig.
He, in fact, is, and I apologize, Craig. Which led to Mickie James and Kofi against Beth Phoenix and Santino, and it was a fine little match. I gave it 2.5 stars. The highlight was Santino's commentary during the match, and Mickie ended up hitting Santino with her DDT, but then the Glamazon clonked Mickie from behind and hit the implant buster for the pin, and there's a lesson to be learned from this match, and this is what it is. Everybody knew what was going to happen. Everybody knew that Beth Phoenix was going to win the championship for her man. They still did it, and it was still fucking great.
Yes.
If they would have had, say, Kofi Kingston pin Beth or pin Santino, and the champions retain their titles, I would have been like, wow, that was shocking, I guess. But I would not have enjoyed it at all, and I would have been mad. I do not want to be surprised when there are better options, even if we know what the options are. So I knew what was going to happen here, and I'm glad it happened.
I'm ecstatic it happened. This team so deserves to win. But as you put it, not only did Beth win the title for her man, as the announcers noted, he was virtually unconscious because he was selling the DDT out cold. Beth had to revive him, hand him his belt, and he was still confused. And when he finally realized what had happened, he began to French kiss the belt. He had a great celebration, although those in the Proper household were disappointed he did not play his air trombone again. But he was very, very happy. He had declared that he did it all by himself. Beth, of course, won her belt, and all was right with the world. And as noted, the highlight
Actually, he held both belts. He felt he won both championships.
Yes, I was thinking of the top of the ramp, but before that, Santino stood on the apron with both belts. Beth stood on the floor, and he climbed on her shoulders, and she paraded him around holding both belts in the air.
Yes.
It was the best thing I ever saw in my life.
Let's break it down. She's the man in this relationship,
Yep.
and he's the woman.
Indeed.
Actually, that probably even sounds sexist based on how they portray this. But, yes, this ruled.
It's all great. The highlight of the match was Kofi faking a dive and doing that thing where he hits the rope with his neck and bounces back. Santino's response to this fake dive was to shriek like a girl in the 50s who had seen a mouse and leap into the arms of his savior Beth.
Yes.
His protector.
Fabulous.
This is all great entertainment.
So then Shawn came out with his wife. And this woman deserves an award. She was so awesome.
From beginning to end, actually.
She was awesome. He was awesome. And Chris Jericho was awesome.
Chris Jericho's suit was also awesome.
I cannot do this justice, but to cut to the chase, Shawn came out and announced that his eye had gotten worse, and combined with the back and knee injuries, he was retiring. And he talked about his career and the things that he had done. And when he first said he was retiring, people actually screamed, "No!" and booed.
It got better.
And he continued saying it was not going to be unpopular, blah, blah, blah. And finally, out came Jericho, and the look on Rebecca's face when his music hit was golden. And he came out in his fat suit, and he basically said, "I will not allow you to leave in this fashion. I want you to stand right here and tell the world that you are not leaving on your own terms. You are leaving because I fucked up your eye, and I ended your career."
Yes, he wanted to make it clear that Shawn's legacy would be that Chris Jericho ended his career.
Yes.
The WrestleManias are out. DX is out. None of that matters. All that matters is that Jericho ended it. That was his point.
So Shawn said, "Fine, I will admit it, but what I want you to do is I want you to go home, and I want you to look your wife and your children in the eye, and you tell them that your daddy will never, ever be Shawn Michaels." And they had a long stare down. Shawn turned to leave. Jericho grabbed him to throw a punch. Shawn dodged it. And Chris Jericho punched Shawn Michaels' wife, Rebecca, right in the face. And he hit her hard. And down she went. And Shawn began to lose his mind in the ring as Jericho slowly left and inched his way back up the ramp. And as noted, I can't do this justice, but I will just say that I would have rather he pulled the punch. But at least she got punched for the best fucking angle of the year.
Yeah.
This was a WrestleMania hundreds and hundreds of thousands of buys angle. And unfortunately, we're going to see it in September. But God
not perfect.
Damn, this was motherfucking great.
It was so perfect. And frankly, if you're going to potato a girl with a punch, this was the perfect punch to do it with. She got a fat lip. Yeah. That sucks, but he didn't, it's not a broken jaw, it's not a chipped tooth, it's not a missing tooth. The swelling will go down in a few days, and she will be fine. It was really if he threw this punch 1,000 times, it would never be this perfect. Unless he just pulled it, which would be better. But, yeah, and again, we can't do justice to the angle, but Shawn was so perfect and so believable. Rebecca, his wife, actually, a single tear did, in fact, roll down her cheek at one point.
Yes.
As her husband stood there.
A single tear.
I swear to Christ, I'm not exaggerating. That happened. And Shawn was believable, as he sounded like a guy who was just accepting the fact his career was done. As he noted, it had been 20 long years. He had done everything. He had formed DX. He listed the good and the bad. He formed DX. He was Mr. WrestleMania. He was the icon, the showstopper, the main event. He had all the world titles, all the awards. At the same time, he was the guy who retired Ric Flair. He was the guy who screwed Bret Hart. He was the guy who even lost his smile. And it was like a perfect speech looking... Here's a full confession. Here's everything I've done, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, and it's coming to a close, and I'm okay with that. And then Jericho came out to just be the ultimate prick, just to steal Shawn's final glory, was what he wanted to do. And when Shawn wouldn't give him that, he of course got violent, and it happened, and it was great. And people even before Jericho came out, when you mentioned the people were screaming and booing when he said he would retire. It got better. As he got into his speech, they found people who were crying.
Yeah.
Crying.
Yes.
They
Crying.
were so moved by the retirement of Shawn Michaels here.
He's a heartbreak kid.
Here halfway through SummerSlam.
He broke hearts.
Yeah, yes, he did. He broke several in this building, and it was kind of funny because people so believed the retirement that when Jericho's music hit, there was a huge cheer because I think they all figured out, yay, Shawn's not really retiring.
Yeah.
It was this segment was so fucking awesome from beginning to end.
This was the best angle of the year. I don't care what anybody says. Then we had the worst thing on the show. Mark Henry and Matt Hardy went like 30 seconds. Matt immediately hit the twist of fate. Tony Atlas pulled him out of the ring for the DQ. Yes, a DQ in a match for the ECW title via pull out of the ring. So Atlas went after Matt afterwards. Jeff Hardy made the save, squashed Atlas with a dive, and then they gave Henry a double suplex on the floor and left him laying. And I was going to give this -1 star because this was offensive to the ticket-buying public. But when I saw Tony Atlas selling his abdomen on the way to the back, I gave it 1 star. That
selling was worth 2 stars for you.
It was. Tony
it was
Atlas's selling was so over-the-top hilarious that I got to give this 1 star.
It was amazing that after all of these weeks of they dedicated 1 hour a week on Sci-Fi basically to building up Matt Hardy versus Mark Henry, and we said no one wants to see this, but they've done a great job of building it up.
I said they've done everything they can to build up a match that nobody's going to pay to see.
If there was one person, even one person, who was convinced to buy SummerSlam because of this match, they got ripped off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. My other favorite part here, briefly, as we mentioned, they went 30 seconds. The first words out of Matt Striker's mouth after the bell rang were Matt Hardy in the black and gold pants, Mark Henry in the black singlet.
Yes.
Or Mark Henry in the black singlet. Thank you. There was no other way to discern which man was which. I was confused.
And we had CM Punk against JBL for the world title. JBL's dropped some weight. I gave this match 2 3/4 stars. It was pretty good. There was some problems there to finish. The big spot was Punk went for a flying kick, and he landed and JBL landed, and the back of their heads clonked together. And Punk was face down, so his knee also smashed into the mat, or his nose, sorry. And JBL, in hitting the back of his head on Punk's skull, looked like he was knocked batty.
That's exactly what I was going to use.
And they went a little longer. JBL put him on the top rope, hit him with like 6 of the hardest fucking forearms you've ever seen to the back, gave him a back suplex off, and then Punk almost immediately hoisted him up for the GTS and pinned him. And I don't know if they went home early because of the head bonking, but the finish came out of nowhere. And, JBL was clearly not happy with one Mr. Punk.
Indeed, and right after it happened, you mentioned that he was due for a hit. Excuse me, that was earlier in the match. After there was a miscommunication spot where Punk,
I don't know what happened.
JBL threw a forearm, but as he threw it, Punk went to hit the ropes.
Yeah,
and they bonked into each other, and you said Punk is about to get hit hard, and actually, it didn't really happen. JBL just began to stretch his abdominals.
Yeah, he did,
and that was
not
Punk.
as good as Tony Atlas's, but
no. That was Punk's strike 1. And strike 2 was this leg lariat or flying kick, whichever it was. And, yeah, JBL looked like he got knocked batty. Punk was bleeding profusely from the back of the head.
Bad.
It was bad times for all involved. And just JBL setting Punk on the top rope and wailing away on him was, I'm sorry, I'm guilty of something here, but that made me laugh.
I laughed too.
And then Punk won, and then the fans liked it. And
he didn't hurt him. He just hit him in the back.
Yeah, exactly.
He's fine.
And they were both hit more by the head spot than by these forearms. So Punk always knew how to hit the GTS. People loved him. So
it was just like 6 shots. Like he was going, "Watch where you fucking land, geek."
Yes.
He may have been yelling that for all I know.
Hopefully he was. But yeah, and it long term didn't damage either guy. I'm sure they'll both be okay. And it was your rating sounds about right. This match was fine for a pay-per-view. The World Championship is a mid-card match, but it was fine for a pay-per-view mid-card match.
Triple H versus Khali for the world title. I gave it 1.5 stars. It wasn't horrible. It was not all that good. There was some embarrassingly bad stuff. There were loud and frequent chants of "you can't wrestle." There were a lot of nerve holds. The story was, can Hunter pedigree Great Khali? He tried 3 times and finally got it on the 3rd. And that was the extent of that. So,
There's not a whole hell of a lot else to say. They did at one point have one of the worst brawls of the year. The only brawl worse may have been their own brawl on SmackDown 2 days prior. That was also horrible, but I did like Khali getting tied up on the ropes, hitting a boot, and then apparently I think he was legit stuck because he was looking at the ref and shouting, and the ref had to come over and hork him out of there. But other than that,
I love that spot, by the way, when a giant man gets wrapped up in the ropes, and you charge at this helpless man, and he still kicks you in the face and beats you up.
Right.
God, what a fucking dumb baby face.
Indeed, but it went like 10 minutes with the Great Khali, somewhere in that range, and it did not totally suck. So that's really the best you can hope for.
Cena and Batista, I gave 3 3/4 stars. I think that this could have been a 4 1/4 star match if they'd gotten more time. It seemed rushed. It seemed like it should
very
have been,
early they were doing jackhammers and fisherman suplexes.
This should have been a 20 or a 22-minute match, and I bet they got about 14 or 15 total. I think they cut out the first part of the match and got right to the meat of things. And what they did was great. I just think it could have built better. And anyway, they did all sorts of scary spots and kicked out of their finishers at the finish. And fans were more into Batista than Cena. They did the boo and yay spot on the punches, and they were booing Cena and cheering Dave. And the big finish was Cena going for something off the top, and he got power bombed in midair for a great near fall. And then Batista just got up, looked mean, booted him in the face, hit a second power bomb, got the clean pin. A really great match. And I presume this leads to a second match, which Cena wins. And then, of course, the rubber match can take place at WrestleMania. But all of this stuff was very, very good.
Yeah. It did occur to me that, we've talked about how they are basically wasting this match on SummerSlam when it could be a Mania main event. And not only was it wasted on SummerSlam, but it was the semi-main. It was not even the main event on the show. Which,
well,
this could have been.
They were not following the Hell in the Cell.
I'm sure that's true, but it just should not have been booked for the show at all, is my point. That being said, they did book it. It was
technically,
really good.
This is the third biggest pay-per-view of the year. I won't count Royal Rumble since that's a gimmick pay-per-view, but I mean, as far as just straight match big pay-per-views, this is the second biggest one of the year. So better here than I would rather semi-main event SummerSlam than main evented like September show.
Okay, that's fine. The hell was I going to say? That totally threw me off because it seems like this match as the main event of September show would boost the September show by a great degree.
It would, but it's still I don't know. Maybe Cena and Batista is a big enough match that it should headline the big pay-per-view of the summer. I mean, it's big enough that it should theoretically boost a lot of on-the-fence people that would buy SummerSlam. And I don't necessarily think it would have been, I think it would have boosted September a little bit, but you might as well try and make the big money on the big show.
I see.
And it's here you go. So there you go.
I'll buy that. So
besides, they've got Shawn and Jericho for September.
They do, in fact, have Shawn and Jericho for September.
Which after the angle tonight.
That is an excellent point. So they had their match, and I like the fact that people indicate, and by people I'm mostly speaking of Michael Cole, he seemed to think that Dave Batista was a much stronger man than John Cena. And he has I guess he'd have a better physique, and maybe he can lift more weights in the gym, but John Cena has way more power moves than Batista does. Dave has the big Dave bomb, which he has done to giant men like Kane, and he has a spine buster, but Cena has FU'd the Big Show and Khali and Viscera. He's so much stronger. And Michael Cole at one point referred to him as sneaky strong. Sneaky.
Like it's deceiving?
Like, yeah, you would not think this giant man who is big all the time, all year round would be, powerful. Yet he is. And he had probably the biggest power spot in this match was when Dave went for power slam and Cena landed on his feet in like a reverse DDT position. And from there, hurt Dave up onto her shoulders in the FU position. It was awesome. Awesome. And the match as a whole, the basic reason I liked it more than the main event was because it was more like this was just a wrestling match. There was a lot of smoke and mirrors and props to use in the main event, and that just, I like wrestling. Unlike, for example, Bubba Ray Dudley, I like wrestling.
I also like Cole's line about, he was talking about all the custom suits Dave owned. And I was like, are men that large with that kind of body normally just grabbing suits off the rack? You know what I mean?
Swing by pennies.
Great Khali gets fucking custom everything.
Yes.
What the hell does that mean? Except that he's fucking big. So anyway, Edge and Undertaker, Hell in the Cell. This cell was enormous. Like the biggest cell I've ever seen. And they had a great match. They brawled all over the place early. A bunch of tables, ladders, and chairs came into play. This was, in fact, a TLC match in a steel cage. cage.
Yes. Although at least here, unlike TNA where Booker just wanted weapons, Edge had never been in Hell in a Cell, but he had plenty of experience in TLC.
Yeah.
So he loaded the ring side area with the weapons he was most comfortable with. So that makes sense.
And it was simply a stipulation of a Hell in the Cell. They didn't have to say a Hell in the Cell with weapons. So anyway, they used a bunch of weapons. Edge did a spear and knocked a entire panel off the cage. And so they began beating the hell out of each other outside for a while. They did a big spot on the announcer's table, got back into the ring, and I don't even think there was blood in this match now that I think about it. And did all sorts of near falls and
such.
They are
rated G.
In the mid-ring, and the finish saw they had two tables set up outside, and Edge went for the old school on Taker, but Taker crotched him and then gave him a chokeslam off the post through two tables stacked up. And then he threw him in the ring and proceeded to kill him with all of his own moves. He speared him, he hit him with a video camera, which was the finish to Survivor Series, hit him with a concerto, and then tombstoned him to death for the pin. And it was a very poetic finish to a very, very good match. I gave it 4 stars. And then afterwards, this was like 4 stars, and she just turned the TV off right there.
Yeah.
Because the post-match was so wacky. They cut backstage, and La Familia was all